Good morning and welcome back to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm Diana Skaya. The political crisis in Georgia has escalated dramatically. Now, opposition groups in the country's capital, Tbilisi, are staging round-the-clock protests claiming election fraud and demanding a rerun. Now, tensions spiked as Georgian police broke up demonstrations, leading to arrests and injuries. Now, this unrest could have significant implications for Georgia's democratic trajectory. And to help us unpack these developments, I'm joined by Victor Kipiani, chairman at GeoCase. Good morning, sir, and thank you so much for being with us here on TVP World Talks this morning.
Good to be with you. Good morning.
So now, videos circulating online really showing Georgian police throwing some protesters to the ground, dragging them along the pavement, using pepper spray on protesters. Georgian media Interpress agency saying that 16 people had been detained. Really quite a political crisis unfolding here, sir. How significant is this public's response to the protests and shaping the political future of Georgia?
Yes, there are several circumstances which have to be mentioned when we speak about shaping the Georgian political landscape or domestic landscape in the aftermath of the elections. All in all, the status quo could be qualified as something being in the flux. Of course, the ruling party, which is Georgian Dream, pretends to having the serenity in the country, but this is just well-wishing thoughts. On another side, we witness that continued protest, which is ebbing and flowing, but still is there. And international recognition by Georgia's major partners, international recognition of the results of Georgian parliamentary elections, and that recognition is still on hold. We also have a statement by the Prime Minister who said that the first session of the newly elected parliament would be convened on the 25th of November. So there is much to happen within that period and within the coming weeks. Again, it much depends on that intensity of the public resistance in the country and reaction by international partners. Predominantly, we speak about the Western countries because some countries have recognized the elections results, but those recognitions are not as significant to form up a wider public opinion about the validity or the legitimacy of the Georgian elections.
Right. Well, we're seeing some pretty aggressive images right there on screen, sir, as you were speaking. Tell us, though, how has Georgian Dream responded to these protests? What is it planning to do?
The comments which we had by Georgian Dream, those comments fit very neatly into the policy line which Georgian Dream has been propagating for the last years. It's about conspiracy. It's about Georgia as being the besieged fortress. It's about keeping Georgia's identity and dignity at all with all the efforts. And the comments which we've had as a reaction by Georgian Dream leaders as their response or their reaction to the demonstration of the force by the Georgian police has been in line with those statements that the protest has been staged up by some foreign influence agents. It has been backed up by some foreign actors.
Right.
Although they never specify who those foreign actors are.
I mean, sir, but these protests. Sorry about that.
Sorry?
These protesters are saying that they're going to stay there on the streets of Tbilisi and possibly elsewhere around Georgia until something is done. But now, what are the potential consequences if the government doesn't address the demands that these protesters have?
The potential consequences are of political nature and economic nature. Political consequences could be that the Georgian parliament, even if it's convened, and taking into account that Georgian opposition refuses to enter into the parliaments, that would be a very sort of lame dog in a way, and continuing governing the country, or pretending having the normal governance based predominantly and overwhelmingly on a one-party rule, is something which could seriously damage and compromise legitimacy of the parliaments and of any governments which would be elected by that parliament. So this is one consequence of political nature. Another consequence of political nature is Georgia becoming sort of, the pariah state. And that disconnect which happens between Georgia and the European Union and the United States clearly would have an impact, and very clear impact, on the Georgian geopolitical posture. But on top of that, there's the economic effect and the economic consequences. We already had that have statements by EU officials that, effectively speaking, Georgia's EU integration process has been stalled. And as a result of that, different economic aid programs and packages have also been suspended. We also had a statement by U.S. spokesperson for Department of State yesterday, who has reconfirmed that revisiting U.S. policies toward Georgia is in the process. So the consequences are already there, and with the passage of time, those consequences would become even more graver and more serious.
I mean, if we look at what happened, sir, in Abkhazia just recently, I mean, the protests, we can say, were possibly deemed successful here. Do you foresee that a scenario like this might happen in Georgia if these protests are to continue?
I don't expect the repetition of the same scenario, because Abkhazia is a bit a different story for some reasons which would be hard to elaborate during this interview. Abkhazia actually is not a self-ruling or self-governing entity. It is completely sealed off by under the Russian control. And another major difference between Abkhazia and the rest of Georgia is that Georgia Dream, which, as I'm repeating, is a ruling party, is very much sort of open to closer ties with Russian Federation, and making those ties better and better with the passage of time. So I don't think that the repetition of Abkhazian scenario has all the preconditions to be replicated in Georgia.
And
so differences are there, but one a common feature for Abkhazia and the rest of Georgia, that Georgia, alongside with its breakaway provinces, which is Abkhazia and the so-called South Ossetia, remains to be still the Russian geopolitical strong influence. And that's the problem which Georgia has to address. But alongside with Georgia, the European partners and the United States has to address, and has to do that rather sooner than later.
Thank you so much, Mr. Victor Kipiani, chairman at the GEO case. Thank you so much for being with us here this morning and breaking it down for us.
Thanks.
And that's all for this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Don't go away. Up next, more news.